Hello everyone. Today I want to show you some features of Excel. Specifically I want to tell you about absolute references, but I'm going to show you a few other little things along the way. So to illustrate this, I'm going to do a problem where I'm going to determine the empirical formula of zinc iodide, and I'm going to use experimental data that students in the past have collected in the lab. So what they did is they would have taken some metallic zinc and iodine, mixed them in a methanol solution and heated it, and they would have isolated a zinc iodide product. So here are some data from 8 students, and we see that we have the initial mass of zinc, the initial mass of iodine, and the zinc iodide product mass. So one of the things you might notice is that all of the significant figures aren't the same. The balances in our lab weigh to 3 places past the decimal point. So this 2.43 was actually 2.430. This 2.1 was 2.100. So you might have noticed if you try and type zeros in Excel, it won't do it. So what you have to do is you have to highlight this entire block right here, and then these are the increase, decrease decimal features up here. So if I increase the decimal, it increases a bit too much. So if I play around with it, now I get all of my masses to 3 places past the decimal point. Okay, now what do I do next? I want to figure out the mass of the zinc and the zinc iodide product. So I'm going to write a formula. So I'm going to type equals. And if we have a product that only has zinc and iodine in it, and if we assume that iodine is the limiting reagent and it completely reacts, what that means is that if I take the product and I subtract from that the mass of the iodine, then what's left over should be zinc. So I can copy. I'm going to hit Control C. I'm on a Windows machine, so Control C and then Control V to paste. It looks like I've already formatted this, but again, I should illustrate for you that again, you would want to do the increase decrease decimal to make sure that you have expressed this to 3 places past the decimal point. Okay, now I want to convert the zinc mass to moles. So I'm going to write a formula where I take the mass in grams divided by the molar mass, which is up here. And if I type equals, that's going to give me the number of moles of zinc in my zinc iodide product for student number 1. Now what I want to do is I want to copy this, but look what happens if I don't make any adjustments. If I do Control C and then Control V, I'm going to get a lot of error messages. And the reason for that is that Excel assumes that if you just write a formula like this, that they want you to change it every time. So E10 over B6, E11 over B7, E12 over B8. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to take the mass of the zinc and the zinc iodide product, and we want to change the masses for each student, but in each case we want to divide by the same molar mass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to student 1, and I'm going to change my formula to $B, $6, and then hit enter. What that tells Excel is that if I copy this and then paste it, that Excel could go ahead and change that E10, but it should not change the B6. So now if I do Control C and Control V, you can see that I'm getting my correct masses converted to moles. And if you look up here at the formula bar, as I scroll through this, you can see I get E10 over B6, E11 over B6, E12 over B6, E13 over B6. So all of the masses change, but in each case, we're always divided by the molar mass. So that $B, $6 is called an absolute reference. What that means is that the $B means don't change the column. The $6 means don't change the row. So if you don't change the column and you don't change the row, that means don't change the cell. So $B, $C says, sorry, $B, $6 says, I want to use B6 every single time. Don't change it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease my decimal. So I have 3 significant figures for my moles because I have 3 sig figs here. Okay, so for the iodine, actually the iodide in the zinc iodide product, it comes from iodine. So we have assumed that all of the iodine reacts. So that's shown here. If we then, I'm going to use some parentheses here, I know that if I take 1 mole of iodine and divide it by the molar mass, except this is the molar mass of just I, so I'm going to have to multiply this times 2. And the other thing that I'm going to put in here, which might seem a little bit redundant, is that we should note that for every 1 mole of I2, we get 2 moles of I. So I'm going to put that in here as well. That actually doesn't look right. Let me try that again. Okay, so if I have the initial mass of iodine, I'm going to divide that by the molar mass of iodine, which is this times 2. All right, that looks good. Okay, and then I'm going to note that for every 1 mole of I2, I get 2 moles of I, so I multiplied that by 2. Okay, that looks much better. So I've taken my mass of iodine and I've divided it by the molar mass of iodine, which is going to be 2 times 126.9, and then I note that for every 1 mole of I2, I get 2 moles of I. So this is my correct formula right here. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to do another absolute reference, because at B7, I'm going to want to copy for student number 1 and then go all the way down. So that means that B7, I have to do another absolute reference. So let's do $B, $7, and hit enter. So now if I hit Control C and Control V, then again you can see if you look up here at the formula bar that you get C10 divided by B7, C11, C12, C13, C14, C15, C16, but B7 stays the same all the time. The next thing I need to do is I need to format the Sig Figs, because this isn't right. If I have 4 Sig Figs here for the I2 and 4 here, I should be able to get 4 Sig Figs. Okay, that looks good. All right, now let's calculate our mole ratio. So let's do I to Zn. So there's the moles of I divided by moles of zinc. Oops, sorry about that. Let's try that again. Okay, equals moles of I divided by moles of zinc. Okay, that was much better. Again, let's do Control C, copy for the remaining students, and my moles of zinc has 3 Sig Figs. This has 4, so that means this can only have 3. So let me adjust. If you get this, that means there are too many digits for the width of your column. But I don't want my column to be that wide anyway, because I'm going to. That's right. I'm going to get my mole ratio is in 3 Sig Figs. Okay, now I want to calculate the average of all of these 8 students. So Excel has some built-in average functions. So I'm going to type equals, and then I'm going to type average, and you can see it comes up. And then I'm going to type the open parentheses, and then I'm going to highlight this whole column, and then closed parentheses, and now I get my average. And I didn't think I'd set up my formatting, but again, you would use the increased, decreased decimal, and we've got 2 Sig Figs right here. Let's do the standard deviation. Okay, so that's going to be equals STDEV, and we have S and P. This is sample, and P is population. We only have 8 students, so we're going to do sample. So that's the one that we want. So it's STDEV dot S, and then we'll do open parentheses, again, all of these, closed parentheses, and now we get our standard deviation. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is, you might remember that, okay, so I can decrease the decimal, but that's not right. You might remember that the mole ratio, the standard deviation only has 1 significant figure, so that means I have to sort of play around with my increased decimal until I get 1 sig fig, so I'm there. And also you might remember that the average and the standard deviation have to have the same number of places past the decimal point, so that means I have to go back and decrease this. So there I have it. So I have a 2-to-1 ratio, not bad, because in fact the empirical formula is ZnI2. We have 2 iodines for every 1 zinc, and I'm going to want to have my ZnI2. I'm going to want my I2 to have a subscript. So let's go up here and just highlight the 2, and I'm going to right click and get Format Cells and hit Subscript, and there we go, and I have my ZnI2. So this was mostly how to use absolute references, but another few things thrown in here for Excel for good measure. So I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in lab.